The conditional tense in Spanish indicates what one would do or what would happen in a situation. In English, it's a very simple concept because it doesn't matter what verb we use, we always put the word would before the verb, which doesn't change the verb itself. In Spanish, the conditional is a tense that has only one word, which doesn't really get conjugated, but rather keeps the form of the verb as the infinitive and then adds some letters after it. As a matter of fact, its modification pattern is similar to the simple future tense, where verbs don't get conjugated, but rather they change by having letters after them. Just like the simple future tense, it doesn't matter if we use AR, ER, or IR verbs, stem changing or irregular yo verbs, the change to the verbs themselves will stay the same across almost every verb there is in Spanish. For the yo pronoun, you keep the form of the verb and put the ending ia with an accent so that when you say the word, the emphasis is put on that accent. For tú, you put ias with an accent. For él, you put ia with an accent. For nosotros, you put íamos. For vosotros, you put iáis. And for ellos, you put ian. With the conditional tense in Spanish, I recommend focusing on all pronouns except vosotros because using any verb in the conditional tense is very useful. However, there are a few irregular verbs, and believe it or not, the irregular verbs that you have in the conditional tense are the same ones that you have in the future tense, meaning that it's easier to memorize these verbs. Nonetheless, the conditional tense has a different conjugation pattern, unlike the future tense. Similarly, there is no pattern to follow with any of these verbs, but they still have the same ending as for regular verbs. In the list, you have decir, meaning to say or to tell, hacer, to do or to make, poder, to can, poner, to put, querer, to want, saber, to know, salir, to leave, tener, to have, and venir, to come. As far as I know, these are the only irregular verbs in the conditional, which are literally the same verbs as in the future tense. And the most useful cases to use in the conditional are in questions like irías conmigo, meaning would you go with me, and you can reply with sí, yo iría contigo. Yes, I would go with you. You can also ask something like compraría él ese auto, meaning would he buy that car, and you can reply with sí, él compraría ese auto. Yes, he would buy that car. Additionally, we can ask ¿vivirían ellos en esta región? Meaning would they live in this region? And you can reply with sí, ellos vivirían en esta región. Yes, they would live in this region. We can also use the conditional tense with irregular verbs like saying queríamos un plato por favor, meaning we would want a plate please. Or maybe tú dirías que esta lección es buena. You would say that this lesson is good. A popular phrase that comes up in the conditional tense is sin ti yo no sé qué yo haría. Without you, I don't know what I would do. And this sentence actually has a negative and uses the verb hacer, which is irregular in the conditional. Just like with every other tense, the conditional can likewise function with negatives and object pronouns, and by far, the most practical and useful application of the conditional is the verb poder, which is commonly used to make polite expressions. Asking something like ¿podrías abrir la ventana? Can mean could you open the window? And you can reply with sí, yo podría abrir la ventana. Yes, I could open the window. Or maybe, if you want to reply negatively, you can say no, yo no podría abrir la ventana. No, I could not open the window. Or maybe, you can use a direct object pronoun instead, like saying no, yo no la podría abrir, or no, yo no podría abrirla. No, I could not open it. With the direct object pronoun being attached to the infinitive or put before the verb, which is possible in the conditional tense. In case you want to include an indirect object pronoun, you can likewise do so by asking ¿podrías dármelo? Or ¿me lo podrías dar? Could you give me it? And you can reply with no, yo no podría dártelo, or no, yo no te lo podría dar. No, I could not give you it. As you can see, the object pronouns can either be put before the conjugated verb or attached to the infinitive. And the same idea applies to any other sentence that you want to say. At last, you can use the conditional tense with reflexive verbs like saying I would take a bath, you would go out, and we would have fun. These sentences use reflexive verbs, and the way that you would say them in Spanish is by putting the object pronoun before the conjugated verb. Me bañaría, te irías, and nos divertiríamos. Practically, however, I don't recommend using reflexive verbs because there's nothing much you can do with them, but it is important to know how they work in the conditional. One last concept that I'd like to present involves the verb gustar, which means to be pleased. Since the construction of gustar can be me gusta, te gustan, and so on, and since gusta means it pleases and gustan means they please, these words can be modified to gustaría and gustarían, which would simply mean it would please or they would please. And I can use it in a polite expression like me gustaría salir, it would please me to leave, or me gustarían los papeles, the papers would please me. And the same idea applies to any sentence that you want to say using the conditional tense. This has been the conditional tense in Spanish. Thank you for watching this video, and hopefully I made your learning just a bit simpler.